am Verdaillia Turner, and this is Let's Talk. Today, it is my great privilege to introduce to you a young lady that is from Atlanta, Georgia. I happen to be from Atlanta, and I think our mayor is from Atlanta. I think he's from Atlanta. And we want to say hello to all Atlantans, but everybody else, welcome to share this. And guess who this person is? Well, you ain't got to guess, because I'm fixing to show her to you. This is the president-elect of the state PTA of Georgia, Mrs. Shanda Ross. Welcome, and I'm so glad that you're sitting next to me.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, you're president-elect. When does your term begin?
My term starts June 10th.
Of this year, 2023?
Of this year. And the fiscal year will actually start July 1.
So how does it feel to be state president of an organization with 250,000 members?
At first it was overwhelming because it was, what did I get myself into? What was the responsibility that I was really going to undertake after there had been quite a bit of turmoil? So it was a situation of having to get back to a mending process and then being able to get to implementation.
So tell us a little bit about that. You said it went through some turmoil, and we read a few things in the paper, and PTA was in the paper for a while. And
yep. PTA was in the paper for a while, and it was cast more so of a racial bias. Whether we had a board that was not diverse enough in order to be able to accept whatever challenges we had. We had to go through a mending process. It was where you had feelings that were hurt on both sides of the table. And it was starting to get to a point where we had to look at what was most important. Did we need to refocus on what requirements, what credentials were truly needed? It was one thing to have a desire to volunteer, but it was another when you had a completely different motive or your own personal agenda that was trying to be put forth instead of doing what was necessary for the children.
How large is your board?
Our board currently is 25 members.
Wow.
And the 25 members actually include, though, at least representation from the 13 districts that we have.
Okay, so Georgia is divided into 13 districts.
Yes.
And so do those districts have managers or special people over them?
So the districts are led by district directors. Each one of the district directors may have 5 to 10 different counties that they're actually covering throughout the state. They would also have, in some instances, there is a council that would be a direct contact for a local unit. But for the most part, all of the districts are led by district directors who are elected by their constituents.
So I understand your board may be elected one year and then the president elected another year. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
So it is a pre-election of the president. The president-elect is always elected before the year that they serve, or I'll say the term before that they actually serve as president. But we have an election every 2 years. So we have a biannual election. That biannual election is actually for the members of the board from committees as well as for those who are coming as district directors.
Now this is a great honor because I remember some of that turmoil, and for you to be elected and to want to serve. I know you went to Sylvan High School here in the city of Atlanta, and who was the superintendent during that time?
Dr. Alonzo Krim.
Dr. Alonzo Krim, Atlanta's first African-American superintendent.
Yes.
And he served for about 15 years.
He did.
Okay. Fondly served. So, again, we're so glad to have you, and I know that you're capable because I know a little bit about you and what you do. Now, you are a parent.
Yes.
First. And how many kids do you, well, your kids are grown, or?
All of them are adult children now.
But, yeah, adult children,
adult
good.
Children.
Yeah, right. And you have how many?
I have 3.
And they are, I know one daughter, for the audience to know, one daughter is here with us today. and she is a new directress. I'm looking at her out of my peripheral vision over there. Cute as she can be. So thank you for having her. And the other two are young men.
They're young men. We have one that is 30. He is based out of Florida, and we have another who is, he's still, well, I consider him a veteran, but he said he's not a veteran because he's now from active duty to guard duty.
Oh, so they're military.
Military.
Wonderful.
And then I have Cecily, who is my one and only daughter.
Which is the new directress y'all started over here.
Yes.
So everybody in the film industry here in Atlanta, if you want somebody, I'm telling you now, just ask us about her. So what do you do for a living?
I actually serve as a cloud solution architect for a major technology company.
Okay. So how did you get into PTA?
PTA was a no-brainer. It was a directive that actually came from my grandmother, who was very much so active in the community when there was W.H. Krogman Elementary School. Mm-hmm. And so during the segregation, prior to 1970, Atlanta really didn't do desegregation until around 75, 76.
In fact, all right.
And so when that actually happened, prior to that, even though I was 5, 6 years old, my grandmother was doing blood drives, and they were doing the participation in the Colored Parent Teacher Association. Mm-hmm. And so from that, it was always inclusive of making certain that not only did the adults volunteer, but the children were volunteering as well.
If you don't mind telling us, what did your grandmother do for a living?
She considered herself as a homemaker, but we found her to be a community activist. So when there was something that was needed, whether it was for a family, whether it was for a church, or whether it was for the school, she was one of those leaders that was out there that would go door to door and ask, where's the help and participation that you can provide?
Door to door.
Door to door.
And she solicited help that way.
She solicited help. She was one of those who, when you needed a petition signed, she was gathering the signatures.
So did your grandmother or mother ever come up to your school?
All the time. The community knew me and knew who my parents were. They knew who my grandmother was. And that was all the way through second grade. Because in second grade, that was when I was selected and chosen, along with some of the other students, to participate in the majority to minority program, or minority to majority program. We used to call it the M&M.
M&M.
And that was the busing program that actually took us from our community, and we would go to a predominantly white community. So my elementary days ended at Brandon Elementary School.
So instead of, I'm just reading into this, being bitter and blaming, you had parents and grandparents who were solution-oriented. Would that be a good definition or a good characterization of them? Okay. And so during segregation, I know that was a sensitive time. However, we got through it, and you are here today. With the help of the values that you picked up from your parents. Okay, that is absolutely wonderful. Now, let me ask you this. Today, PTA, some people say it's not relevant. And, of course, it is relevant because you're still sitting here. But tell us, for today's parent, why they should be involved and how they can get involved in PTA.
One of the things that has stood out most is the engagement factor of parents being able to be a part of knowing what is being taught from a curriculum perspective and knowing what legislation is actually being enacted. The legislation that has come out within the past, I'll say 2 legislative sessions for the education arena has been somewhat overwhelming because we have had bill after bill after bill, and parents because of the pandemic, and even prior to the pandemic, didn't really have the knowledge base to know what was going on until after it was either voted upon or at the day of voting,
And how it's going to affect them.
and how it was going to affect them. PTA is allowing that inside insight and being able to look at how to foster relationships, not just with the administrators that you have in the education school district or within the school itself, but how to foster those type of relationships with our legislators that are representing us. Having the PTA be able to kind of give that guidance, be able to present the opportunity, being able to not only get the opportunity to speak to the legislator, but also to bring forth as a group and as a whole what we consider as the one voice. That's how we are able to, one, stay relevant and be able to offer a service to our parents. Keeping the engagement not only on the level of being engaged within your child's education, but also being able to be engaged in the history making that's happening with the legislative process.
I have found also for several years now overwhelming legislation as it relates to education. And why do you think there's so much going on down there with education? At the
Money.
state capitol. Oh.
It comes back to the money. And where the money is being spent and how to be able to divide and conquer. When you have special projects that you want to make sure that there's funding for, of course, you're going to be more assertive and more aggressive in getting that point across. But if you're able to do it in a manner in which there is, I'll say, quietness, but selective strategy being done, for lack of a better.
Selective strategy.
Selective strategy.
Yes.
Sometimes it lets you see that there's a check that's already been written. You're just now seeing it. Okay.
Just seeing it.
So it's a matter of, is it going to be sent or is it not going to be sent? The check's already been written. The other thing that is coming out is the divide that's kind of being made for public education versus private education. And I had the experience in middle school because we actually relocated after elementary school. And I went to private school. We relocated to Columbia, South Carolina for about 5 years. My father was the first black warden for Richland County. And I went to a Catholic school for middle school and for high school. And I came back and I went back to public school, starting my high school years. So the division that is kind of being set forth is now you have vouchers to be able to allow you to have a private school experience when the same value, if not exceeding value, in public education is still there.
Because some of the people who are even homeschooling their children are coming back to use the athletic equipment, the fields, and that kind of thing. And, and then we have some folk, and God knows I love them, who homeschool their children. And, you know, I'm not against that, but we also have to make sure that those public schools are not stripped of the funds and resources that have been there. Well, what was the difference in the Catholic school and the public school during the time you attended?
Curriculum-wise, there wasn't a difference. If anything, the public school experience was a little bit more aggressive.
Would you say richer?
I would say richer. I would say even the instructors were more persuasive. They were more, I'll say, suited for the job of being the instructor, as opposed to when I was in the private arena. The same requirements and restriction of what credentials were needed in order to be that teacher, it wasn't there.
They weren't there. Okay. Now, when you were in Catholic school, were you taught by nuns?
I was. I was taught by nuns. I was also taught by priests. There were some where we would have some sessions that included, the cardinal happened to be in that area, so there were some that were there too.
There's a little book called Black Like Me. How many of your teachers were black?
None.
None. Okay. And in your, how about the student body, what percentage was black?
2.
There are only 2. Okay. So, all right, well, you know, we could do a dissertation on that too. But when you came back to public school, what percentage of the teachers, or how many you think were black?
100%.
100%. You were at Sylvan.
I was at Sylvan.
And what about the population of students percentage?
98% were black. I will say probably 1% were either Hispanic or Asian. And then you had a very small percentile that were Caucasian.
So we have more diversification now going on because of, you know, our moving about economically in other communities and people being assimilated, that kind of thing. But if we go back to private schools, the private schools can mostly hire the teachers whom they want, and all of them could be white, all of them could be black. Now, if they're getting into federal money in there, they're going to have to mix up something. They got to mix up something. So, but I think kids, would you think that children and adults fare better in situations where we have more diversification than more homogenous like population? What do you
Absolutely.
think?
You're going to be able to learn. When you have a culture that is diverse, there is no experience that you're going to be able to not have an offering of that is not going to enrich what you have. I always take something away from people that I embrace, as well as taking something away from just the conversation and just even the greeting. So that is something because there is the opportunity to have a more diverse school body, administration, and even parents. You're always going to be able to take something away from that. And it's not going to do anything but enrich rather than take away.
We still have a lot of segregation, not just in schools, but economic segregation in communities, churches, etc. And we can say something positive and negative about that. PTA, what are you all doing about, and I think the State Department is changing the word equity, and that kind of, oh my God,
Diversity,
I don't want to get into that.
equity, and inclusion.
What are you all doing to be to promote more diverseness in schools and in society?
We are reaching out to all those communities.
Okay.
And when I say all of those communities, it would be all of the communities that are considered at that point as making up diversity.
Is that through programs and et cetera?
Some are through programs. We do have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program where we actually teach how to accept differences, how to acclimate yourself in being able to be in the room and not feel that because you may not look like your counterpart that you can't offer anything to the discussion. So there are classes that we have, there are workshop sessions that we are presenting, we have resources that we are actually pioneering where we have recognition that is coming not only from the state level but also from the national level where we celebrate diversity, equity, and inclusion.
And I have seen some of these workshops as it goes full circle. If I'm a Caucasian, and African Americans must learn to appreciate me and my background, and even while I think the way I think, that's if we are going to openly communicate and learn from each other. A lot of that comes from living and socializing among each other. And you know, if I'm an Indian, it's the same thing. Or if I'm a woman or whatever, and if I'm not a size 8 like I like to be, same thing, you know. Because we can discriminate based on whatever.
Yes.
Now I want to get back though to the privatization matter. You mentioned vouchers.
Yes.
And I did not know when Governor Kemp was running, he didn't mention vouchers to us.
Right.
But I understand Sunday died the last day of the session there was a caucus of Republicans called by our illustrious governor to support vouchers. And the governor is not an educator, so I'm wondering where he get this idea from. Because vouchers, well, I'm not going to lead, I'm going to have you to answer that. But I saw that there were 11 or 12 Republicans who told the governor H no. Y'all, that means heavens no. And in my opinion, they did the right thing. But vouchers keep coming back.
Right.
When State Representative Tyrone Brooks was down there, they fought vouchers. They keep coming back.
Right.
So you know if you keep knocking at something long enough,
Right.
that door is going to come open.
Exactly.
Then the bill had on the $6,500 for each child. That's not enough to educate a child anywhere, not even a public school.
No.
So vouchers, let's say if that voucher bill passed, what would be the positive? Give us the positive points about vouchers. Give us the good stuff about vouchers. Y'all, I don't mean to put the inflections in my voice. Give us the good things about vouchers.
It's hard to say what the good things are, because when I'm looking at the comparison of an education without vouchers, I can't say that I am more supportive of a voucher instance in this case. What would be the good? I think there's only one, and that may be it offers an opportunity for a different experience, but it's not whether or not the experience is going to be good or not. You don't know.
Well, in saying that, working parents, those folk that's caught in those traffic jams every day, those are working parents, working people, period. They will say, I could take my child from Redan High School and put my child at Lakeside High School, if they think Lakeside High School is a better school. Or I could take my child from, let's say, Douglas High School in Atlanta, and I'm going to take my child over to the other side of town. That's if you can get your child in that school.
Right.
That's if there's a seat.
If.
And the voucher money, that's a problem too in terms of if you put your child back, where's that money going? Is it going back? $6,500 will not educate a child.
Will not.
And when you look at what most of the public school districts are spending, a lot of that money goes on special programs.
Yes.
So if you have a child that is gifted, or you have a child who can't feed him or herself, that must be put on buses with special apparatus, special personnel, kids up to age 22 in those programs, kids 13 and 14 in diapers can't feed themselves. And that's not to mention our middle kids. That's not to mention what I would call just everyday traditional or regular education. That money, who's going to pay for that? And are people going to be running with vouchers, who's supporting vouchers, or these special charter schools to take care of that population? So now there is some good about vouchers, and I'm going to tell you what it is. The research shows that if I'm sending my child to a private school, I'm going to send them to a private school anyway, because I got the money.
Right.
And I'm going to do the write-off. I'm in that tax bracket. I know one educator whose grandkids go to a school, not in Georgia, where they're paying $50,000 for these kids, and they're not even 6 years old.
Wow.
Okay? Because of who's there, and perhaps, I guess they think they're getting something better. And they might, because I understand the student-teacher ratio is like 1 to 11. How many folk can do that around the country, period? But that income bracket, I mean, the grandfather alone is making over $500,000 a year. I don't know what the parent is making. And you might see this tape. I'm not going to call your name. I'm not against it if you can pay for it. Not against it at all. But here's the problem. They will be getting my money. In other words, they can afford to send their kids.
Right.
And that family also, to that family, hello, family, I know that they're already anti-voucher. Thank you for that. But it's a tax break for folk. It's a money handoff to folk who already has money. And from what you have seen and what we know, what we've read, the vouchers improve learning. The answer is no.
Who's
So the question is, why is Governor Kemp supporting vouchers? And we're going to ask the Republicans, now I'm doing something different, the rest of our Republican brothers and sisters to say H no. Okay, and you can say heavens no in a kind way to vouchers. That bill is still alive, two-year session. Public, as you've heard the PTA state president say, they come in through the back door. Now, you all are very involved at that state house during those 40 days and 40 nights of rain. I call it the most dangerous time in Georgia.
Yes.
What do you do, or what can you do, or what are you doing to equip parents on how to slay the wicked beasts that are coming against an educational system just at the state house with laws? And then the next question, follow-up, is going to be, what can parents do right there on the ground in their schools to be more effective? So how do you all first help parents, because many of them are intimidated,
Right.
navigate through the state house?
We actually show them the bill. We go through the bill. We tell them this is the bill that's been presented. This is what this bill means. And this is how you contact the writer and sponsors of the bill. And in addition to contacting those sponsors, to contact your legislator. And we have basically gone through where we give them, here's the strategy. Keep calling. Let them know your answer is no. This isn't what is actually feasible and profitable from a standpoint of it's who is the profit going to. So we educate our parents. Knowledge is power. And we go through that process.
You have a lobby day at the Capitol?
We actually don't have a paid lobbyist.
Oh, you don't?
We don't have a paid lobbyist
But all
at
the
all.
folk who's pushing all these money bills do.
And we have parents. We actually have our parents go down. They speak in the committee session. They actually show up. And we have PTA Day at the Capitol.
No, wait, we talk about equity? We want to talk about equity? Huh? How are we going to talk about equity when big businesses and folk with special interests have lobbyists that they can pay out the gazoo, out their own banks and piggy banks, working against everyday citizens? Equity? So
all
do
we
you
have are our parents.
Are you going to have a lobby day this year?
We're going to have a lobby day. We normally have a lobby, well, we have a PTA Day at the Capitol. It just so happens that when we had it earlier this year, we had it during a time in which the session was actually, it was in session.
I wonder, could we pass a law whereas we have a day or two off? Certainly a day, we expand the session to be 42 days. Hey, Governor, 42 days. So those first 2 days, all legislators must show up. And it will be a day where parents, teachers, educators, and everyone can come into their state capitol, but the legislators are there and there's no other business. And they will talk. And the bills that people plan, Mr. Speaker, hello, to keep alive, the public know it up front. So they'll know what to push and what not to push. I think that we would be a more united Georgia if we did it that way. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. But during the session, it's kind of hard to catch those legislators.
It is. But we take time and we actually show parents how to schedule meetings. We have gone through the process of scheduling Zoom meetings. We have gone through the process of showing up and being in person so that the point can be made. If we can't get it where we have the direct meeting with the legislators, we show up to the committee meeting. And we actually get on and we speak during that session. And then we basically come back from doing any of the committee meetings and that's when we do our phone calls.
Do you all have any proposed legislation or things that you would like to see passed?
We had the support of looking at the poverty bill that was being pushed and passed for there to be a weight ratio for the QBE funding based on that. We haven't at this time come up with any additional, only because we do a survey of our parents in the state of Georgia and to see what it is that they want to have a focus on. And we get those legislative priorities, and then we go from there.
So QBE, Quality Basic Education, all of my hair was brown. Governor Joe Frank Harris, that formula is still woefully underfunded. Now, to the governor's credit, hello, governor. That's the third time I said that. To the governor's credit, he did ensure that the funding formula that's there now was finally met. But guess what? It's grossly underfunded. Look at when QBE was put into effect and how Georgia has grown and all the great things that these public schools are doing. Oh my God, like in Gwinnett County, under this superintendent we have now, I was looking at the culinary arts and looking at the technical education, and Dr. Mr. Wilbanks started some of this also. They're continuing the great work under the superintendent that's there now. But it's grossly underfunded. So if it's underfunded and the money isn't there, why in the world are we pushing vouchers? Legislators, thank you for saying H-no. And there is one person in Atlanta that sits in Abel Mabel's seat. Representative, I'm so sorry I can't remember your name. But not only did you not vote with the Democrats, and I'm so glad some of the Republicans did, we're going to ask you this time to get it right and vote against that voucher bill, and we're going to ask that 5th district to get on it. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now there's a challenger, and I don't want to be controversial, but we're going to speak positive maybe first. There's an organization called PTO, and some parents don't know the difference between the two. I would like for you, if you could, please, tell us why did PTO come about when we had a PTA?
So PTO isn't an organization. It's actually a magazine, and it's a website. And if we pay attention real closely, that's what the O is for, organization. It doesn't have the association of being incorporated. And one of the things that as a parent-teacher association is we have the incorporation that goes along with the nonprofit status that's there. So many times we will have the challenges where there are PTO groups, as I call them, where they have not experienced all of the credentialing process in order to be a accredited group in itself, where you have the incorporation status there. The other thing that with some of the PTO groups, we find that there is a problem with having a structure of accountability, because at that point you don't have necessarily bylaws, or you don't have those things that require you to be incorporated that will allow your organization to follow in a structured manner.
So now I want to get down to just some brass tacks before we close out, because I may be missing some things too, so you can just let me know.
Okay.
On the school level, in some schools we are woefully inadequate as it relates to parental engagement. Why do you think that is the case, and what can we do about it?
Most of the time it comes down to the school administration and what they see the interpretation of the parent involvement being. If it's anything where it's going to challenge an administration's decision, whether it is is the funding, if I raise funding, is it going to go toward teacher appreciation or things that are supplemental to what they don't have in their budget? Or is it going to go toward the children? And one of the things that we emphasize, for every funding that PTA provides, there are 3 activities that are going to go back into the children, whether it be curriculum, environmental, or even focusing on arts. So that challenge is usually one that observes whether or not there is going to be a PTO or a PTA.
So now every child is coming from some type of home.
Every child.
Some type of home. Foster home, grandparent home, juvenile home, 2-parent home. They're coming from somewhere. What can schools do? Oh, I mean, just one schoolhouse to reach out to every one of those parents more than one time a year and give an account for that. I reached out to this parent, and what you think the messages should be? Or should they have to be held accountable to somebody to reach out to every parent? I'm not talking about sending a note home or email. I mean, actually knowing that that parent is there.
I actually had a principal that contacted me today from a county that we do not have a huge presence on. But the emphasis was how I can get other parents to reach out to other parents as opposed to it being a one person from my administration having to do it. Because the importance of having the parents being involved was, how do I get this done? I don't have enough time in the day in order to administer the staff or to be able to administer children, let alone now having to come back and try and figure out how to engage my parents. By having a parent-teacher association in the school, that will relieve a lot of having to make those contacts. You're going to have the contact not just being made once a year. It will be on a continuous basis throughout the school year. And it will be one that allows them to be able to not only know what's going on in the school, what's going on in the classroom, what's going on with the students, what's going on with the teachers, but also what's going on with the administration.
So we want to institutionalize parental involvement because the parent is really the customer.
Exactly.
The child is not the customer.
Child
the parent
is not
is
the parent.
And so, and we know that about 51% of what children retain is coming from outside of those classrooms.
Exactly.
And you have great parents and parents
Yep.
involved, such as your grandparent and yourself, and it makes all the difference in the world. I know when I was teaching school, I'm just going to be honest, y'all. The parents who really showed up and I was in touch with, when I look at their child, I'm thinking about their parent. I mean, it's human nature. Not that we weren't trying to discriminate against children at all, but we got to get parents involved. Now, there's really, I think, only a small percent of parents who cannot make it to the schoolhouse.
Right.
But a lot of parents don't know how to be engaged,
Right.
don't know they can be engaged. And as you said, sometimes school administration is not doing everything all it can be to be in the United States Army, be all you be. But they are not doing everything they can to knock down those doors to get to those parents and give an account of
Right.
Johnny and Keisha's mama
Yes.
and daddy. There is a parent somewhere.
Yep.
And that parent can make all the difference. And PTA can help principals and teachers shape how to involve parents. And parents can help them how we can help at the school level.
Yep. And our parents help other parents.
Yep. Yep.
Because we pay attention to those parents that can't come. We know that everybody has a different circumstance. And sometimes it becomes the parent that you have at school that's helping the parent that you have at home.
And parents are a rich resource. I mean, they're architects, they're pharmacists, they're grandmamas. It's a wealth of knowledge there where parents could help other children, other families,
Yep.
and their school.
Yep.
So really, parents are key. Parents are key. Parents are either key to whether or not we can have discipline.
Exactly.
Because you could take, as you know, one bad apple and it will spoil the barrel. Just put it in there and watch. and 2 bad apples. Oh my God. All right. I don't know what that's going to do. But, okay. So give us, from your, how long is your term?
2 years.
Can you run again after 2 years?
No, not for president.
Oh, ooh, that's short, 24 months. What do you plan to get done in those 24 months? What's going on good in PTA maybe that you want to keep? And what changes you want to see or what additions you want to make?
Mainly to bring us into a technology era. We have been a nonprofit that has suffered from being a part of the technology movement, and that has cost interaction, especially when we had the pandemic. It was a scramble. We were able to make it through, but it let us know that there needed to be a different structure. So the plan currently is to, one, expand our services that we're able to offer to our local units by creating a network that will allow them to not only have their own websites, their own e-commerce stores, to also be able to have that communication that's not only going to be through social media platforms, but addressing and meeting parents where they are. But not just the parents, meeting teachers where they are, meeting the administrators where they are. We have evolved from, we're 106 years old. This is our 109th convention that we're going to have in June. Over those 100 years, we're all dependent upon what we use on our phones. But we don't have that same technology that we have put in place before. So by the end of the 24 months, actually before the end of the first 3 months, the Georgia PTA network will be established for the local units, and we'll also be able to have an advancement that we'll have within our technology that's going to allow not only the emphasis on arts, where we have our Reflections program, but looking at science, technology, and math.
What is Reflections?
Reflections is the art program that we have that focuses on various mediums of art, from photography to dance, and we actually have a competition that is at every local unit. It goes up to the council level and state, and then goes to national. Our state representation, normally, I'll say within the past 5-6 years, we have actually had some of their art displayed in the High Museum.
So you could probably use some help from our other fellow Atlantan, Mayor Andre Dickens, as it relates to the movie industry.
Yes.
And also, I know in DeKalb County, they're doing a lot of different things with the movie industry. But PTA, somehow, probably y'all need to talk.
Yes.
I'm just saying, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We're trying to get the film industry, because we look at Atlanta as the new Black Hollywood. So.
Well, when I was maybe your age, it was called a Black Mecca.
Okay.
Back. But anyway, economic engine and all of that kind of thing, which it is a great city.
It is.
And we've had some great leadership. May I say in both of us in the camera. May I say we need both of us in the camera. I know everybody gonna laugh at this. In whose hometown? Our hometown. All right, then. Okay. So now, so you told me some of the things that you want to do, and I know one of the things you want to defeat.
Yes.
At the State House, and it happens to start with a V. I can't emphasize that enough. Vouchers, y'all. Vouchers need to be buried. They need to stop coming back up, and they need to be buried. That is not the will of the people. That's the will of somebody forcing something on the people. Is there anything else that I left out that you would like to say? Like how to join the PTA?
I want to solicit for all of our viewers to make certain that they go forward with looking at the PTAs that are in different schools, local units. And if you don't find one there, there's always our state unit, which is our Bernie Butler unit. You can join online at georgiapta.org, but there's always a room for another parent, another volunteer, and you don't necessarily have to have a child in the school system in order to be a participant. You can be one of those who just wants to advocate and have a grassroots feeling of being engaged within the children of today.
And the dues, y'all, how much are the dues usually at the local level?
At the local level, they are usually about $10 for the whole year. And we've actually seen that's been over an increase. So when we panned it out, it wasn't even a situation of having any more than 5 cents a day.
I was about to say, by the time we go to one of my favorite coffee shops, they're not paying me to say this either, Starbucks. We can pay those dues.
Yes.
And look, we encourage everybody to join. And remind me to give you my money before I leave, because I got to join.
Okay.
Haven't joined. Not this year. So, shame on me. Correct it. We would be remiss if we did not mention a PTA giant in this state, and that is the late Dr. Norman Thomas.
Yes.
Would you like to say something about that educator and say something to his family?
Dr. Norman Thomas was one of the most articulate gentlemen that I knew. I grew up in the school system to which he served tirelessly for under the Atlanta public school system. He was actually one of the first black male presidents and the first black president for Georgia PTA. He served as the first black male vice president at the national PTA level. Has been enriching upon every encounter and is just a huge miss that we will have in the days to come. For his family, we appreciate and thank you for allowing us to share Dr. Norman Thomas.
And if I may take upon a personal privilege, I am, some people know me as president of Georgia Federation of Teachers. I'm also president of my local Atlanta Federation of Teachers, our hometown. Dr. Norman Thomas is a founding member of the Atlanta Federation of Teachers. He's a charter member of AFT, Atlanta Federation of Teachers, which is an affiliate of the Georgia Federation of Teachers, which is an affiliate of the American Federation of Teachers. He was a man of integrity. His family is the same way. His son, Norman Jr., some people call him Little Norman, is a minister who lives by the word. I'm just going to flat say it, y'all. Some folks get scared, but he lives the life that he preaches. He has a wonderful family. And when people who are around you and your family members know that what you, in other words, when you project yourself publicly and you can take it home and it's the same way, that's a real person. The daughter, I think she is principal of Barack Obama School in DeKalb County. Doing a wonderful job, a beautiful job, and that is because of the mother, educator, and Dr. Thomas. I think they were married over 60 years, so there are good marriages, y'all. I'm encouraging folk to get married and raise these kids in structure. There's a reason for that. I know I'm getting on a tantrum. But you don't hear about good marriages. Those are good marriages. I talked to Dr. Walker this morning. He used to be in DeKalb County. He was active PTA and administrator of State Senator Eugene Walker. He and his wife, and I said, how long y'all been married? They said 62 years. I said, it made me feel young. 62 years. So there are great marriages, and Norman Thomas was such a, Dr. Norman Thomas, man of humility.
Yes.
And he always had time. He was always delightful. We're not saying this, y'all, because he's deceased and we got flowery words. This is one of God's children. And when I know in heaven, I want to believe there's one. When he exhaled, he inhaled in our Savior's face. But thank you so very much. And I want to thank you.
Thank you.
I'm getting chills, y'all. This has been an honor to be with you today. You told me about a website, and we're going to end it on that note.
Okay.
I hope, because I can keep on it. Tell me about this website that is about Atlanta and who put it up.
Well, it's a Facebook group.
Aha.
And it is Skip Mason's Vanishing Black Atlanta History. And I'm a member of that group, but I know that I just relish every single time in looking at the different historical facts that bring back a smile. Mm-hmm. And it's always remember when, but it just...
And how.
And remember when and how.
Yes.
Remember when and how. And it just makes you, when you see some of the items that Pastor Mason puts up, mm-hmm. you can't do anything but smile.
We really appreciate Skip Mason
Yes.
for the history, the labor of love
Yes.
over all of these years.
Yes.
Because, y'all, there's nothing new under the sun. Ecclesiastes is so right, nothing new under the sun. And we can learn from history. And,
Yes.
and all those folk who want to destroy it, we can learn from it. But we want to thank him. And so that's Vanishing Atlanta.
Vanishing Black Atlanta History.
And it's something how most Atlantans, we know each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you love Atlanta, Mayor Hartsfield, Maynard Jackson, and all the work that Andy Young and all Ambassador Young, he had so many titles, and we're grateful for that. I mean, people who have helped build this city, although Andy may not be from the city, he's in Atlanta now.
Yes, he is.
We want to do a shout out, not just to the Vanishing Black,
Right.
but I want to do something to all my white friends, because I have a lot of them. I went to Bass High School. And maybe we should put up, I ain't white, y'all, but y'all know that, though, you know. Well, why did I say that? But I just want to say to my white friends, maybe y'all need to put up a site too, and then we'll bring it together for some equality, some equity. I'm just having a little fun. But okay, I'm digressing. But thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that Atlanta has raised up a wonderful lady, who has raised up 3 wonderful children in our city. And now she is the president-elect, soon to be president in June, of the state PTA of Georgia, with 250,000 members. Thank y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure.